Hi, welcome to the last movie of Section 1. Today we'll be covering Berkeley. Before we talk about the Berkeley article, though, a couple reminders on the class. You need to finish up the two reading quizzes, the one for Locke and, of course, the one for Berkeley. Also, we have those folio papers that are coming due. Remember, there's 6 of them to do. You need to do all 6. Ideally, you're working on those things in Word or some sort of a word processor, getting them all nice, and then as the deadline approaches, go ahead and paste them into the assignment box on Canvas. Probably not a good idea to work on them there. So today, what we're going to do is talk about Berkeley. He's a contemporary of Locke. He comes about a generation after, and he wants to return philosophy to common sense. In particular, he thinks some of the notions that some of these scientific philosophers like Locke and Newton and others have produced just violate all principles of good common sense. Oddly, one of the concepts that he thinks violates the principles of good common sense is people's belief in matter or substance, material substance, or what Locke refers to as substratum, which is just the Latin word for substance. Berkeley is going to attack the belief in matter with a two-pronged attack. So the first thing that he's going to try to do is he's going to try to collapse Locke's primary-secondary quality distinction. And in so doing, again, he's going to make this rather scathing claim about the nature of matter. In the second prong of the attack, he's going to look at Locke's particular definition of substance or substratum and try to show that it doesn't make sense. Not only that matter doesn't exist, but that the entire concept doesn't make sense, that people don't know what they're talking about when they use the word matter, which is quite a claim, because I think we learned about the existence of matter back in first, second grade, something like that, right? So for him to come along and say matter violates the principles of common sense, and we don't know what we're talking about when we use the word, again, quite a claim. All right, so let's start with the first prong of Berkeley's attack on substance or matter. He's going to try to collapse Locke's primary-secondary quality distinction. According to Locke, a quality, again, is power in an object to produce a sensation in the mind. So we have a causal relationship, his causal theory of perception, the cause and the effect, the quality and then the sensation it produces. The primary qualities, right, those are in objects, and those qualities produce sensations in the mind of the perceiver, right? And according to Locke, as far as the primary qualities go, the primary qualities produce sensations, and those sensations resemble the quality in the object, right? This is, of course, his bridge to the real world. He needs some way of saying that our knowledge of the world actually resembles how the world is, right? A secondary quality, though, for Locke is different. He thinks those two are in objects and they have the ability to produce sensations, but there the sensation doesn't actually resemble the quality in the object. So to attack that distinction, good old Berkeley starts with a quality like color. Color, of course, is a secondary quality for Locke, but Berkeley, with his appeals to common sense, asks the question, how do you know that a thing has the color that it does? And the obvious common sense answer is that, well, we can see it, we can sense it. So he gets the first of his premises and he says, look, right, color is a sensible quality. It's available through the senses. Sounds good. Then he goes on to argue that all sensible qualities are immediately perceivable. We're aware of them right away, right? Immediate perception is something like if someone calls me and says, oh, I'm sorry, I got the wrong number, I just got done with a really long run. I can immediately perceive that that person must have had legs. To go on a run, you got to have legs, but I'm not directly aware that they had it. I go through some sort of an inference, and that's not the sort of thing that we do when we're engaged in sensory perception. So sensible qualities, again, are immediately perceivable. Third premise is that anything that we can immediately perceive, right, must be an idea. Because if you can immediately perceive it, that must mean it's an object of thought. It's something that you can think about. It's something you can be aware of. But you can't be aware of anything that's not a thought, right? All the contents of your mind have to be thoughts, right? So now if I put those three together, color is a sensible quality. All sensible qualities are immediately perceivable. Anything that's immediately perceivable is an idea. I get the really robust claim, color is an idea, right? That's problematic. It's problematic because whatever matter's supposed to be, I don't think Locke, Newton, or any of these folks thought that matter was a thinking thing. Matter in like a desk or a table or a chair, that matter, right? It's not thinking, it's not conscious. But only thinking things can have ideas. So if it turns out that color's just an idea, well, matter can't have it, right? Locke would respond to this and say, that's exactly the point I'm trying to make with my primary secondary quality distinction, right? The word color is actually ambiguous, Locke would say. One sense of the word color is color might refer to what I'm going to call color Q. Color as it exists as a secondary quality in an object. Another kind of color is color S. Color as we perceive it, the sensation, color S, right? Now on Locke's model, color S causes color Q, but color Q causes color S, but color S does not resemble color Q. Again, that's that relationship between a primary quality and the sensation it produces. So, of course, matter can't have color as we perceive it, because matter can't have sensations, but clearly, Locke would say, matter has color Q. It has the quality, the power to produce that sensation in us. Well, Berkeley, in this philosophical tennis match, comes back and says, okay, Locke, let's try shape. Now that's significant because shape is one of Locke's primary qualities, right? So Berkeley has started with color, a secondary quality, and now has moved to shape. And he says, how do you know the shape an object has? Relying on common sense, we have to admit we know it through sensation, right? So shape, it too is a sensible quality, right? Let's pull out that same second premise. All sensible qualities are immediately perceivable. Same third premise, anything that's immediately perceivable as an idea. Now we get the conclusion shape's an idea. Now we can't do the same thing we try to do with color, where we distinguish between two kinds of shape. Shape sub Q, shape as it exists as a quality in the object, and shape sub S, shape the way we perceive it, because it's a primary quality and the way it appears to be is the way it's got to be. That's Locke's whole point. What Berkeley has done here is he's tried to show that, look, qualities like color and sound and taste are not the sort of thing Locke wants us to believe. Locke wants us to believe that these are special powers in objects to produce sensations in us. Berkeley says, no, no, no. Color, sound, taste, these are the things of which we're aware. These are the things that we think about. But again, according to him, if we can think about them, if we can be aware of them, they have to be ideas, right? So he collapses the distinction by showing all these different qualities are really all the same sort of thing. They're all ideas. From here, he launches into his last argument, at least for this first prong, and this is what I'm going to call his master argument. He claims, okay, well, how do you know something's a physical object? Because Locke, Newton, and these others want to claim that objects have matter or substance because that's what gives them permanence. Think about it, that's what subsists, substance, right? They have existence over time. Well, Berkeley says, okay, well, how do you know a thing's a physical object then? Well, because I can sense it, I can look at it, I can touch it, right? I can hit it and I can hear it. So he says, you mean that physical objects are a collection of sensible qualities? Okay, gotcha, sounds familiar. We borrow the same second premise again. All sensible qualities are immediately perceivable. Anything that's immediately perceivable is an idea. So now we got it. Physical objects are really collections of ideas. No matter, no substance, right? They're collections of ideas. Physical objects are the things of which we're aware, right? But to be aware of them, to be able to think about objects, they have to be ideas. This produces a problem, though, because certain objects, if they really are collections of ideas, ideas only exist if someone's thinking about them. So let's say I have, my pair of glasses, I left them on the bedstand overnight, no one thought about them all night long. Well, if they're really a collection of ideas, then, well, no one was thinking of them, they must, they would have disappeared, but they didn't. right? So we have to ask Berkeley that question. Why is it that they persist, right? If they're just what ideas? What keeps them in existence? Okay, second prong, right? Because we'll take this little piece and we'll plug it in later. Good old Berkeley is going to say, look, Locke's concept of substance, of substratum, is just inherently flawed. It's totally confused. It doesn't make sense. Okay, let's see if we can get it going. And he launches into three problems with Locke's definition. So according to Locke, he says substratum, substance is, and I quote, this is what Locke actually says. He says, it's that which supports qualities, I know not what. Right? That which supports qualities, I know not what. And what he means by that is that to make a physical object physical, there's got to be a set of something that keeps all of its qualities held together into the tight object that it is. Well, that, he says, is substratum, substance, right? Now, it turns out that I cannot experience, I'm not aware of, I know not what. I don't know about matter itself. What I know, what I'm aware of as a human being, is the sensations that are produced by the qualities that a piece of substratum holds up. Right? That's his model. Okay. The first attack against substratum from Berkeley is what we're going to call the contradiction problem. On the one hand, he says, look, John Locke, you're a good empiricist. Right? You're the father of modern empiricism. Empiricism is the claim that all ideas originate in experience. A corollary of the claim, all ideas originate in experience, is that if you don't have an experience of something, you can't have an idea, right? But on the other hand, he says, John, look, you're saying that you believe in this stuff called substratum, but in the very definition, right, that which supports qualities I know not what, you're sort of admitting that you can't have an experience of substratum. Again, you have an experience of the sensations that are produced by the qualities supported by the substratum, but you can't experience substratum itself. So on the one hand, Locke wants to hold, I don't have an experience of substratum itself, but I have an idea. But over here, the rule of empiricism say, no experience, no idea. He can't have it both ways. Now, I think Locke might be able to respond to that. But we'll let that lie for now. The second attack is what we're going to call the extension problem. Extension is one of good old Locke's primary qualities, and what it refers to is some things having length, width, and depth, right? So the property of occupying space, that's what extension means. Now in Locke's model, it's kind of this pincushion model, right? So you have the pincushion, the piece of substratum, and then all the pins or the qualities it supports. Well, interestingly, Locke makes extension, right, one of the pins, right? But that would mean the pin cushion itself is not extended. But if it's not extended, if it doesn't occupy space, it can't do its only job, which is to support qualities. So my bookcase here, right, this might be a good example, right, too. Where the books, those might be examples of qualities. And the bookcase, that would be analogous to something like substratum. Now the books then are separate from the bookcase. Now here's the problem again. One of the books would be the quality of extension. So that means if I took that off the bookcase would no longer occupy space. How many books could I put on a bookcase that didn't occupy space? Right, just total utter confusion. Now it's not that if something doesn't occupy space, it doesn't exist, right? I mean, I owe money on my house. I have a debt. Debts don't occupy space, but they exist, right? I have the hope that my daughter graduates from college. That exists, but it doesn't occupy space. It's a more interesting point. If substratum doesn't occupy space, if it doesn't have extension, then it can't do its only job, which is to support qualities, right? Third attack. It's what Berkeley calls, or I'm going to call, the passive-passive problem. So let's start with the claim that two passive things cannot interact, right? If I'm playing pool and the white ball's passive and the 8 ball's passive, there can't be causal interaction between the two. If I'm going to have causal interaction, at least one of the objects needs to be active, right? The problem is, Berkeley says, in Locke's causal theory of perception, both things are passive. Namely, the mind, right, is passive when it comes to sensation. Locke refers to the mind as a tabula rasa, blank slate. He thinks objects act on our mind and produce sensations in us. So again, Berkeley says on Locke's model, the mind is passive when it comes to sensation. But Berkeley says, look, substratum, this is a word that's been around a very, very long time. If Locke wanted to mean something brand new, he could have made up a new word. He didn't. Now, since he uses a word that's been used for a long time, again, it's in Latin, right? Then he's kind of committed to bring with it the definition that that word has, right? It's traditional understanding. And traditionally conceived substratum or matter is that which is potential in an object. As a great example of this, think of Michelangelo. And someone asks Michelangelo once he's carved the statue David, right? They go, how did you do that, right? And Michelangelo, and this is probably false modesty, but he says, the statue was already in it. I just helped bring the statue out of the marble. So we think of that big hunk of marble as this set of potentialities, right? So matter is what's potential in an object. Well, potential is traditionally conceived of as being passive. So matter's this passive stuff. Now there's the problem, right? So if our mind is passive when it comes to sensations, but objects are made of this passive substratum, Gödel Locke cannot explain the causal interaction between the two. Two passive things cannot interact. Okay, let's do a little puzzle then. Berkeley says there is causal interaction between the world and our mind. Right, so there is interaction. He says, furthermore, he actually believes that the mind is passive. He agrees with Locke. Well, if there is causal interaction and this side is passive, he concludes what that means is whatever's outside of us must be something active. Right? Okay, where do we go from there? Well, if we go back to the conclusion of that master argument, physical objects are collections of ideas. Let's grab that piece. Whatever's outside of us must be something that's active that now is capable of having ideas. So what's outside of us causing our ideas in us must be an active mind. Moreover, we have my glasses problem, which is if they really are collections of ideas, they only exist if someone or something's thinking about them. So whatever's outside of us must be an active thinker capable of thinking of all things at all times to keep them in existence. You got it. This is Berkeley's argument for the existence of God. Right now, he would claim we're walking through the halls of God's mind. So for Berkeley, right, we really are living in the matrix, right? This is all here because God's thinking about it. Kind of a trippy worldview, right? And once he gets us there, I'll admit, when I first read this stuff back when I was taking the class, kind of the way you are now, I thought, wow, that doesn't make much common sense to me. The very guiding principle good old Berkeley was set up with, right? But then to just reiterate, I mean, I think he's got us on a few points here. I mean, he's absolutely worth considering, right? Because if I ask the question, what is the matter? Like, what is matter then? Let's go through our options, right? One option is maybe matter's the object of which we're aware when we see a physical object. I'm aware of the matter. Well, that can't be. We might have thought that 2-3 weeks ago, but we can't possibly think that now. If we're aware of something, if we can think about it, it's got to be an idea. Can't be aware of anything that is not an idea, right? And it hasn't taken us very long to realize maybe what we might call a representational theory of mind. Our mind, our ideas, are representations of objects and not objects themselves. What I'm aware of are my ideas of things and not things, right? So it doesn't look like matter can be what I'm actually aware of. Second thing that matter could be is maybe matter's the cause of my ideas, right? Well, as Berkeley's already pointed out, look, matter, substance, by definition, is what's passive in an object, right? Here's the question, can a passive thing be a cause? Doesn't look like it, right? Also, and I really like Berkeley in this, he says, how can that which is non-thinking, like matter, be a cause of thought, right? And the reality is that we as human beings, we've been looking for matter for a really long time, right? We kind of thought atoms would be tiny little pieces of matter. They're not. Atoms are made up of a whole bunch of tinier little things, and those things are made up of tinier little things. And when we try to get down to it, right, we're like, and at some point, scientists actually changed from talk about matter into talk about energy. Okay, I think we're good. I think we've done enough here. I think that there's way more you could read later on if you'd like, but we're kind of to the point that we need to be for this class. So again, get those quizzes done. Be working on those folio papers. I also put up a prompt on the discussion board that tries to tie some of our readings in with the movies that I ask you to watch. See if you can get to that within a couple days. Make sure you read the directions and what I'm looking for there. And again, be working on those folio papers and really use these films and the readings as a way to tie that information together. Shoot me an email if you have any questions or whatever, but I think we're pretty good. And the next video will have something to do with free will versus determinism, and you'll see it in a week or so. Cool. Thank you very much.